fulfillment accuracy, how whether specific inventory has a turnover, what is this turnover rate for specific inventory, right? Looking at supply chain lead time, right? So if you have a sheet of data that kind of shows you all of your inventory and how it's being sent out, what regions is being sent out, what is the lead times. Instead of having to analyze all yourself, you can leverage ChatGPT or Copilot, but to analyze this information. When it comes to sustainability, helping when you're thinking of ways to reduce carbon footprint, you can leverage these AI tools to give you ideas on that. You saw the idea I showed earlier about sustainable packaging ideas, right, for a Coca-Cola beverage, right? So you can use it in that sense, but you can also look at it in a way where if you've done a specific initiative, a sustainability initiative in the company, and you can kind of see how you can run sentiment analysis on social media. You can get social media text data, plug it into CodeGPT, and get a quick understanding of what is like the most common things being said about that initiative. You can see media coverage, whether the media coverage is helping the company or actually not helping the company at all, right? So these are just some ways, some creative ways to think about leveraging the tools. All right, so when it comes to just lead conversion rate, I wanted to show this example here. So there's first is data analysis and segmentation. So you can get customer data, and then you can, based off that customer data, let me share my screen here. I actually created an example for everyone so it can, where's that tab? Okay, so here, allow. I hope everyone can see this tab, right? So here on ChatGPT, so you can see, think about it in ChatGPT in the same way. I plugged in a customer data. It's not going to show the data right now, but I plugged in customer data, and then I did analyze customer data included below to identify distinct segments based on customer profession, gender, and annual income, right? So the reason I chose these three kind of components is because, of course, I looked at the data first. Never plug in data without knowing what the data is, right? So I looked at the data first, the CSV file. I think there were about 4,000 different inputs. So I wasn't going to look at this myself. So I plugged it into CodeGPT. I asked it to give segments, right? And then it took a couple of attempts, but after it broke it down into segment 0 all the way to segment 3, right? And then it kind of distributed, like the average age for segment 1 was like 51 years old with average annual income. So this is just public data I got from Kaggle, right? Which is a public data set resource. And so I plugged it in, and this is what it gave me. And then kind of going to the earlier slide, using that data, a clever way to use this is using this data. I can, not only did I did a quick analysis, right? But then I can also create personalized content around this. So let's say I got these segments, and then thereafter I wrote, okay, now act as a content marketer. Based on segment 1, so this segment right here, like 51 years old, average income of this, average work experience, what is their spending score? I wrote down income based on segment 1's income, age, family size, create a personalized content for, and I just thought of a random topic like tech devices that are worth buying, right? You can put in a topic that's relevant for the business, right? But I just put a random thing like tech devices that are worth buying. And then it just started to create the content here, right? Tech devices that are worth buying, top 5 must have. And then now it's writing this content in a way that's very specific for this type of segment, right? As Victoria said earlier, do not fully rely on this to give you the best results. Always, the best advice I always give everyone that I consult with when it comes to Gen AI is think of Gen AI as a starting point, right? Don't think of it as an end point. It should always be a starting point that can get you to that can get you to start your workflow fast. And then the end point should always be humans, right? So at the end of the day, you can always look through the content, see if it makes sense, change a couple of text, get rid of some text, but it starts as it gives you a little bit of a starting point from here, right? So this is a one kind of example of the earlier slide that I showed you here. So data analysis, segmentation, and then you can create personalized content creation, and then automated follow-up sequences. I didn't show you that there because just for the sake of time, but based off of that content, then I can then plug in, I can then write a prompt saying something like, oh, create some follow-up sequences based on the data that was provided on how I can reach out to this sort of segment group, right? And let's say you have an email list of these segments, then you can send out a very personalized, specific content towards this segmented group so that they're getting content and information that is very relevant for them. Right. So that's just one way of using it. Then there's also like improving sales team performance with generative AI. So this is similar to what you saw earlier, but it's just you can get let's say you have a CRM of different customers you're reaching out to, and then you have different dates of like when they're responding, or how much, what's their lifetime value, how much have they actually bought with the company. And then you can plug in that information into ChatGPT, or sorry, CodeGPT or Copilot, and then it can give you, you can ask it to create like a scoring model off of this data, and then it can probably score each individual person, like, oh, this person's probably a high value client because they bought this much within this time frame, right? And then from there, once, similar to the example I just showed you, once you have that sort of key insights, you can then ask CodeGPT to then create a personalized sales proposal or email that is fit for that person, right? And then and then once you have that email, obviously you edit it, you modify it a little bit, and then you plug it into your sales process, which can optimize and speed up everything in terms of getting personalized emails, but also ensuring like who should we send these out to. And then there's also employee satisfaction rate. So this kind of goes to the similar of like looking at the sentiment analysis between your interaction with team members, but like you can, for HR or even just as any company as large as Coca-Cola, you can look at how many people are within the company, how long have they been in the company for, and then you can use this to then create specific initiatives or development plans that help that employee feel more engaged in the company, or let's say if they've been working there for quite a long time, then you can create specific plans that help them, that reward them for that service, right? So just to give you guys a quick little example here, I've done something similar. Yeah, let me show you. Employee feedback. Yep. So I hope you guys can see my screen. I plugged in just some public dummy data from Kaggle once more, and I plugged that in and I said, analyze the employee performance data, act as a HR analyst, and then just give me some insights on average turnover rate, average education of the employees, and then the top 3 departments the longest working employees worked in, right? So then you can see, then it gave me the average turnover rate, which is 8.6. It told me what is the average education level of each employee. And then it actually narrowed it down. This list, I remember this list was at least 150 cells, right? So quite a lot of people. And then it just told me, oh, the departments with the longest working employees was operations, procurement, and technology, right? So for leaders, this sort of leveraging CodeGPT in this way can be very useful, right? Because as leaders, as managers, as executives, you want to really ensure that the right attention is being given to all of your team, right? So these are just an interesting way to sort of quantify what's happening internally within your company, within your team as well, right? And then based off of this data, you can create ways to engage your team better. Maybe if you don't have any ideas, ask CodeGPT, and then it can give you some ideas off of this, right? Okay, let me go back to the slide. Yep. And then we're kind of finalizing out. Then there's, of course, I've spoken about sales and marketing and even with employees, right? With employee like team management, that kind of stuff. But you can use generative AI for customer service and customer support. It doesn't necessarily need to be just for customers alone, but you can use the same method for your team members as well. So in the example here, this is number A point says sample customer issue, and then the customer gives them a little bit of an issue, like, oh, I've had customers calling me all day saying that they can't access their information. And then B is an AI generated suggested response. So you get a suggested response here, right? So in this kind of example, this is super useful for understanding how to deal with customers, because you can leverage CodeGPT or even Copilot to give you suggestions. Let's say you haven't done sales before, but you're a team leader, a team manager, or just somebody that deals with this space. Then you can leverage CoachGPT to give you suggestions on what is the best way to respond to this. And I'll show you a little bit more elaborately in a live demo, which will have follow up. But yeah, this is one of the most common use cases for generative AI, right? And so I think it's worth noting, even if you don't work in sales directly, it's worth noting because this, even if you're just a team leader or manager, you can leverage this understanding for your teams, like what is the best way for me to have a one-on-one with my team member, right? Based off of the way that they speak on call. Feed them the sentiment analysis of the meeting notes, and then based off, then the Copilot or CoachGPT can give you the sentiment that they usually tend to express. Based off of that, you can go, okay, what is the best way to approach or speak to this team member when I'm having a one-on-one, right? That's just one example. Right. So this is just what, just to give you guys a little bit of statistics, Stanford and MIT, they used AI to boost productivity by 14%, and specifically when it comes to customer support. And even with going a little bit further, even with like agents with 2 months of tenure who use tools like generative AI tools, they were able to perform at the same level as agents with 6 months of experience, right? This is the sheer power of AI, having AI in your tool set, right? The expression I always like to give people is AI is almost like having the superpower of a multi-million-dollar company, just but at your own personal hand, right? So this is one of the beautiful things about AI. It can almost allow everyone to get on like a even playing field, right? Regardless of what skills you have or knowledge you have, you can almost even yourself out with AI. And then, of course, improved customer sentiment. Customers that treated customer support agents more favorably due to improved experiences. I demonstrated this in the example above, right? And then the employee retention. With the example I showed you with the employee feedback, you can get the turnover rates, see which departments have the most turnover, for example, and then try to identify why is this happening. Then as a leader, you may be able to speak with specific those teams and say, okay, why is this happening? And try to identify like maybe you can identify the sentiment of the conversations that they're having on the meeting notes, and then try to identify, okay, it seems like the meeting tends to be a bit pessimistic, for example, I don't know, right? Or negative energy. And then from there, you can go, okay, this seems like this team is not coordinating in the most positive way, for example. Right? Are the agents performing at the same level, or is AI performing them? Can you elaborate on this question, Marie? And thank you for the question, by the way.
I guess I'm just trying to understand, and it's on the previous slide, it's the 34% improvement, and what you're saying here is that agents with 2 months of tenure who use this tool were able to perform at the same level. I guess my thinking is, isn't AI performing for them? It's actually not the agents, it's AI.
So in this context, this is specifically referring to leveraging the AI tools to help with like support responses, right? So not thinking about it as like a chatbot. Does that make sense? Because I think you're thinking about it like the chatbot is responding, so the agent, where does the agent play in this? But I think it's more of like the agents that leveraged platforms like CoachGPT or Copilot to help them with their responses were able to perform at the same level as people that were just working were agents for 6 months without AI.
Okay, so the agents using the responses generated by AI.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Because chatbots, yeah, you can have a chatbot like on an e-commerce shop. I'm sure many of you have seen it, or these days telecom companies use them a lot. Chatbots, yeah, they can do directly, but that's not the only way to leverage. That's like more of like a direct AI facing thing. But for anybody who's worked with chatbot or dealt with a chatbot on the phone or on the thing, it can be a bit frustrating. So a lot of companies these days, they're leveraging services where it's like it's a chatbot at the beginning, but then they connect you with an agent, right? So you still need to interact with some human, but in this context that we're talking about on the slide, it's this that a human can still leverage AI tools to improve their response rates. right? Which is why I mentioned it doesn't only have to be for, when I say customer support, it doesn't only have to be customer facing. It can be with your team members, right? Maybe you have a conflict with your team, maybe you have tension with a specific team member and you want to reduce that tension. You can leverage AI responses to sort of communicate with that person the right way. I hope that answers your question, Marie. And thank you for the question.
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. Cool. So yeah, I mean, I think we're perfect on the live demo. I'm just going to show you guys my screen here. So just to show creating like a GPT for customer support, right? So just like how we can leverage it, right? So let me show you. So just for the sake of time, I did plug in the data first. So this, let's say I'm looking at product, like a product data sheet, right? So this is sort of how I would kind of like leverage this, right? So I plugged in the data. So this is once again a public data, Kaggle data, right? So that there's no any like data breaches or anything like that. And so I plugged it in and I said, act as an analyst, analyze the product sentiment, CSV. So this is one tip that I would suggest is, and I mentioned this in the first class as well, is always, I know it's not that of an important thing, but try to get in the habit of making sure you tell the GPT like what you need to analyze. Because sometimes what I found is if you just say analyze this or analyze it can just kind of, that's when it can create hallucinations, right? Because it's just, maybe if it doesn't find anything, it just creates its own data. So I always make it sure to indicate like analyze this specific CSV file, right? So yeah, so analyze the product sentiment and do the following. And I asked it to do a couple of things, like what are the negative reviews, identify which products had the most negative sentiment, extract the most common words used for negative sentiment, and then select 5 negative reviews and show me their review, right? And so then it started giving me results, and then it showed me some common words. So this one I kind of did just because from a marketer's brain. So me having led many marketing teams, I just always think about like what are the sentiment that people use, right? And then from here, I just kind of extend this further. Out of all the negative sentiment reviews, give me the top 5 longest reviews, right? Because then it didn't, as you noticed, it didn't really do what I said specifically by I just said broadly, like show me their review, but it kind of gave me just brief, like 1-word answers. So off of this, I wanted to say, okay, if out of all the negative, I told it, give me the top 5 longest reviews. So I was a bit more specific with it, right? And so that's when it gave me the top 5 longest reviews and said, okay, hard time following up with the Flipkart issue, right? So then at this point, looking at this, we can stop here. But to take it further in relation to customer support, I might then, using this information that I got, I might say, okay, well, based on like review 1, right? Because this one is 1. I'm just taking this one right here. So a hard time following up with the Flipkart for the issue. We're very disappointed with the service. If I want to take it further, I might even just copy and paste this. So based on review 1, right? And I copy paste that. Write a personalized email response addressing the customer's complaints and proposing what do I want to say? Proposing options to perhaps turn the dissatisfied customer into a happy customer. And then I want to definitely tell it, like, make sure to reference and use the words mentioned in their review. Right? So the response feels personalized. Personalized. All right, so then I'll plug that in, and now it's going to start writing some review. I mean, sorry, not a review, a customer like email to them, right? So we're here to help resolve your issues, and then it's just going to give me, I hope this email finds you well, my name. It's going to obviously plug this in. I understand how frustrating it can be when you're having a hard time following up on an issue, right? So this, as you noticed, this is one of the reasons why at the end I said, make sure to reference and use the words mentioned in the review. And I also copied and pasted the review just in case, right? Because I don't want it to just create a generalized customer email, right? I want this to feel personal, right? So this is where I brought that over, and that's why this is writing in a way where it's like, oh, I understand. It's showing sympathy to the specific issue, right? And then at that point, it will I asked it to address the customer's complaints and propose options to turn that customer into a happy customer. So this is where it gave some suggestions of what that customer could do. And so this is just one example of like leveraging GPT for customer support, or as I mentioned before too, not only customer support, not limited to customer support, but just when you're dealing with people in general, right? You get some data on like how they're feeling on sentiment analysis, right? If you have data about like conversations that you've had with the team, then you can plug that in, right? And then you can see what is the typical words that are being used in this conversation. And then it can give you like most common words. And then from there, you can kind of narrow it down to say like, well, what are the key points that are being discussed here? And then you can see some of the key like sentences or phrases that are being mentioned in the call. And then from using that data, then I ask it to create some sort of response that now I can use this response. It feels more personal, and then I would edit it myself, making sure that it fits my voice, and then move forward and send that over to the person. All right. So yeah, I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea. Can you help to give a short, brief difference between ChatGPT versus COP? Also, what tasks should ChatGPT and COP? Can you elaborate COP, please? And thank you for the question.
The Copilot.
I think it's Copilot. Yeah.
Copilot.
Okay. So I don't have the Copilot from that you guys have on the Teams, but for the key brief difference between ChatGPT versus Copilot, what tasks should use? Okay. So this is something that we talked about earlier, which is yes. So ChatGPT, so they can more or less do the same things, right? They more or less do the same things, but ChatGPT, I would use it more on analysis tasks that require analysis, as I just showed in this example. Tasks that require a little bit more extensive ideation, right? If it's just brief ideation, use Copilot. But if it's more extensive ideation, I think ChatGPT's token, like their backend, allows for more response, like a longer response, more response. So I would use it for like more extensive ideation, suggestions, analysis as well, any type of analysis. And then I would use Copilot more for any tasks that deal with like team interaction. So when most of the time team interaction is chatting with the team in like a group chat, and discussing things asynchronously, or having like a team meeting, right? Or discussing specific campaign plans like by text, right? So these sort of team interactive tasks, I would leverage Copilot to summarize what's being said, give a proposal of what's been said, right? Get what's been said in this conversation and draft a proposal, right? And then it can draft a proposal and things like that. Oh, they said thanks. Yeah. So yeah, I hope that helps for everybody. I know it can be a bit confusing sometimes because it's like, well, why is this? We can do this for everything. Yes, you can do it for everything, but it's best. The best way for me is I always just use one tool for a specific use case, right? So Copilot, I'll use it for just when I'm interacting with my team members and doing things for that. And then ChatGPT, I'll use it for more long extensive analysis and creation. I see another message here. Thank you. Jennifer has.
We are quickly on time, and a couple you have other meetings to go to, but just wanted to focus your attention on the lesson survey on the chat. If you can, if you could take a second, it's only 5 or 6 questions about today's lesson and complete it. It'll help us enormously as we keep tailoring the program for other cohorts and other Coke employees. I'll let you finish, Addie. Yeah.
You on mute.
I think you're on mute. Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you. Yeah, I just as Jennifer said, if everyone can just take a few minutes, and not even a few minutes, a few seconds, just to fill out the survey, it really helps Correlation One a lot. It also helps myself a lot as well, and yeah, it would be greatly appreciated. But yeah, just finishing up the lesson. I just want to kind of go into safety, privacy, and data loss. It's not going to be too long, right? So this is just really speaking on what you need to be aware of, right? So when it comes to the using platforms like ChatGPT specifically, CokeGPT is more in-housed in Coca-Cola's data, so it's okay. It's a bit more better. But with Copilot, always be aware of what kind of data you are feeding it or what kind of data you're working with, because with Coca-Cola's guidelines, especially with Coca-Cola implementing these sort of generative AI tools into the company, they should have guidelines that share what kind of data you should and can and cannot share. So make sure to understand this carefully, because you do not want to get penalized in any way in the future, right? So make sure that you're aware of what kind of data you can and cannot feed it. Make sure that anything, like for example, if you're feeding in sentiment analysis about a conversation on a team, make sure people are aware of that. Do not just secretly get the data and go, plug it in. So make sure that there is transparency across the board, right? And some of the best practices here is limit the amount of sensitive information being shared. This may seem very common sense, and everyone here is very intelligent to know, yeah, that's true, right? But it can be sometimes when you get so used to using these tools, it can kind of escape your mind sometimes, where it's just like, oh, I'm so used to using this and uploading stuff. So just always be aware, like, what are you uploading? Is this right? Is this okay? And then also, of course, data usage. Make sure the types of data sheets you're feeding the Copilot or even ChatGPT is okay to send. And then just make sure you speak with the company's HR team or guideline and understand the guidelines of what can and cannot be shared, what kind of privacy policies there are specifically for the employees internally. And yeah, that comes down to the end of the meeting. So yeah, this is just some key takeaways of what was discussed here. Make sure to keep an open mind, constantly keep learning. I know everyone here, some people are a little bit more experienced with using these tools. Some people are just learning them right now, and it's okay, right? Everyone starts from everywhere. And as I mentioned earlier, the beautiful thing about AI is it doesn't matter what skill level you're at. You just play around with it and experiment with it, and you can get good enough, right? So that's the beautiful thing. It puts everyone on like a good, even playing ground. And one last thing, always make sure to experiment and iterate. One of the things I had to learn was it's like a conversation with a human being, right? You might, if you meet someone for the first time and you just speak, maybe you might not understand their nuances, their sarcasm, their humor, but as you get to know them more and more and speak with them, you get to understand those nuances. So it's the same thing with any AI, right? Don't expect it to be a end-all solution. It's sort of a beginning point for you to move to work more productively, and then it's a conversation, a communication that you need to constantly do to get the results that you want. Right? Even the example I showed you above, I had to speak with it like 3 or 4 times, like, that's not what I want, do this, and just to get the right results I wanted to show for everyone here.